Welcome to OhSister, where I unpack my Mormon sister missionary journals 10 years later. So, one theme that this journal review project has been bringing up over and over again is my experience with grief. Particularly how my relationship with grief has changed over my life. And I don't know if you've noticed, but whenever, I'm reading through my journal and I wrote about something sad that happened when I was a missionary, there tends to be some faithful spin. There's like some positive element, some way to see God's hand in it all. And this was something that I learned to do. This was a culturally normative response, in my opinion. I didn't just make this up on my own. I knew that part of being a valiant example of Christ, a light on the hill, was to show my faith through my absolute belief in God's plan and will and timing. This framework is relevant for not just the smaller personal things that can be upsetting on the daily basis, but even for some of life's biggest events, like the death of a loved one. So let me go ahead and read the church's current general handbook instructions on how funeral services should run. So here, I'm going to read the section 29.5.4, the instructions on funeral services, if it is customary to do a funeral service in a church building. Okay, so here's what it says. A funeral conducted by the bishop, whether in a church building or elsewhere, is a church meeting and a religious service. It should be a spiritual occasion. The bishop urges participants to maintain a spirit of reverence and dignity. When a bishop conducts a funeral, he or one of his counselors oversees the planning of the service. He considers the wishes of the family, ensuring that the funeral is simple and dignified, with music and brief addresses centered on the gospel. The comfort offered by Jesus Christ because of his atonement and resurrection should be emphasized. Family members are not required to speak or otherwise participate in the service. Funerals are an opportunity to pay tribute to the deceased. However, such tributes should not dominate the service. A special family gathering, separate from the funeral service, is usually a better setting if the family wants more time to share tributes or memories. Okay, so let me break this apart a little bit. With respect to funerals in particular, the main purpose of the funeral service is not to, quote, pay tribute to the deceased. So it's not even required for family members to speak or participate in a funeral. The funeral service, in at least a Mormon setting, is not meant to be necessarily a ritual of coming together with your community, talking and sharing and crying and remembering the departed person together. No, the funeral service is meant to be a moment of shining as a light to the world, a moment of powerful missionary opportunity. Remind you, it said music and brief addresses centered on the gospel should be centered on the gospel, and the comfort offered by Jesus Christ because of his atonement and resurrection should be emphasized. Or in other words, the purpose of an LDS funeral service is to showcase the gospel's effect on real-life people in their hardest moment. So the job of the family hosting the funeral is to show that they are comforted, is to show that they do not doubt. Also, I recently saw Alyssa Grenfell discuss this topic, so I'm going to link that video in case you want to learn more about the funeral practices in particular. I'll link that in the description. But so I'm establishing the point of how the church treats funerals, but now we're going to jump back to my mission experience with this kind of microcosm in mind. So it really makes sense that when I would bump up as a missionary against some sort of sadness or disappointment, that there would not be a moment to sort of get grounded in the present and like accept the loss or whatever, like accept the sadness, in the same way that the church's handbook prioritizes like just immediately putting a spin of the gospel and making it be about like you're showing that you have faith and you're just completely focusing on like the missionary opportunity of it. It's not about like, oh, that's like, yes, I believe in Christ and all that, but like right now the point of this funeral is to sit and have a ritual, a communal experience where we can like mourn together. That's not it. And that weirdly, but also not weirdly, because that's how society works, that translates to my experiences as a missionary with not accepting, not allowing loss. There was always some desperate take on how good this is actually, and how someday it will make sense, even if not right now. So if we jump to the period in my life when I lost my faith in Mormonism, I was overwhelmed with grief. It wasn't just the grief of losing my beliefs and all that entailed and, my life and meaning and relationships. It was the sudden reality that everything I had already lost or would lose was real. They were real losses, and I hadn't accepted them in the past. I hadn't accepted that I was going to have to accept things were going to be sad at some point, right? And I just couldn't deny it anymore. And I had my whole life sort of denied all sadness, with a veneer of, well, it's sad in this moment, but what is this one moment of life compared to all eternity when everything will be fine? So I don't even have to process my loss and sadness now, because most of my existence will be this infinite eternity of happiness where everything is fine. Now that was gone, it was like, oh no, like I had to finally face at an emotional level that when my family died, when my husband died, when I died, that was really it. And I think if it had been my old faithful self looking in at that moment, I would have been really judgmental. I would have seen that grieving ex-Mormon and I would have thought, oh, see, there's proof that you can't be truly happy without the gospel. Wickedness never was happiness. Oh, ye fair ones, how the righteous have fallen, etc. When I was a very fully believing Mormon, especially on my mission, but in addition to my mission, if I saw someone who was not part of the church or they had left the church and they were sad, they were experiencing some sort of disappointment or loss, I thought that was proof that I was right and they were wrong. But no. The act of facing and mourning a loss, the act of accepting that something important to you has been unalterably changed or lost, this is not only a painful process, but it's a precious one and an important one. Yes, it is unpleasant to feel sad. It's painful to feel pain. And grief is how our bodies learn that the change has happened. And grief is what allows our body and our mind to let go of what was and move forward. to the new reality. I'm not just making this up. I have a resource if you want to learn about grief, another Heidi Priebe video. Please watch it. Very informative. But what I learned from her is that if you do not allow yourself to accept something sad and grieve it and sit and cry and be sad for a while and not constantly say, well, I maybe I feel sad, but it's not gone forever. Like XYZ, believe in Christ, don't be sad. If you don't allow yourself to do that, then there is never the true processing of the loss, and the mind and the heart continue to go on with life as though the loss has not occurred, and it makes it so you can't move forward in life. And I was also, as before experiencing this faith crisis, I guess, I was really scared of grief and sadness because they felt like they would last forever. And in a way they did, because I never, if I didn't feel fully, if I didn't fully feel my sadness, if I just kept kind of pushing it away and kicking it down the road, it was still with me. It was a little dangling can that I was carrying around because I never let myself open the can and sit with it. I was just carrying it around with me forever. So in that sense, it did last forever. But if we allow ourselves to experience grief, it does not last forever. And of course, depending on what is lost, there will be reminders throughout our life of the loss. There will be times when, anniversaries or things that remind us of the thing or person, like, it will bring up that feeling. But it won't last forever, right? But when I look back at my emotional experience from before my faith loss to after, I can see that I had this constant low-lying fear of loss that I was always trying to push away and explain and understand through mind-numbing cliches, whereas now I get to actually face my losses. And although it's scary and painful and sad to face loss, and, I'm obviously not like suddenly an enlightened individual. I don't have everything figured out. And I don't, it's not like I even am the perfect expert on grief and loss and that, but just from this change in understanding and experience, I've learned that not only can I tolerate mourning and grief and I can survive it, but I've learned that it's like an honor, It's I learn through the experience of mourning and grief and sadness. I learn what is important to me. I learn how I want to spend the rest of the time that I have in my one precious life. And I get to do the person or the idea, whatever it is that I'm grieving, I get to do them the honor and the service of actually mourning them, which is something I never really did before. At least, I can't speak for everyone's experience, but I can speak for mine. And that is my experience. I've been having a great time working on this project, and it takes a lot of time every week to keep this up. If you have the desire and the means to support me financially, it really helps a lot. Of course, I have a disclaimer that your donations will not bring eternal salvation for you or anyone else. There are links in the description where you can make a one-time donation Or you could sign up to join my monthly patrons to support this and my other creative work. Thank you. And let's get back to it. Monday, July 27th, 2015. Mission Day 290. This morning, we got a call from some missionaries in Tennessee saying that their investigators are moving to Spearfish tomorrow, and they'd like some help. Lewis and Jill Brassfield, and they claim Messianic Jew. I'm not sure why they picked this particular week to move to Spearfish, but whatever. President Partridge gave us permission to help them, so we'll be up there tomorrow. My personal studies were cut short, but what I did read was very powerful. Remember how sad I was last night about transfers? Well, in Ether 1:38-43, it hit me that their move is like mine. I especially liked this, quote, "The Lord did hear Sister Finlinson, and had compassion upon her, and said unto her, Go to and gather together thy flocks, and when thou hast done this, thou shalt go at the head of them down into the valley of Rapid City, which is southward. And there will I meet thee, and I will go before thee into a land which is choice above all the lands of the earth." End quote. I am so comforted to be reminded that the Lord is mindful of me, and he is planning to put me where I need to be. I know that he will answer my prayers, that I will accept his will and love whoever I may be with. We helped the Woodworths move out of Custer at 9:30 and left when they were done at noon. We're going to Wyoming. Oh, they're going to Wyoming. Anyway, we had to eat it out. We had to beat it out of there because we had pedicures scheduled by the Clements at 12:15. Also, Sydney was chilling with us for the morning, smiley face. We went to Attic Artists, a salon in the ladies' home. They spent about an hour doing leg rubs and stuff, and the ladies were fun to chat with. I got blue, sparkly nails with copper and pearl accents. It looks super legit. Sister Snow was feeling very pressed for time, so we only did an hour emailing. I got my weekly letter done, so that's what is most important. Ma Familia had the family reunion on Pioneer Day, and they also had a nice time visiting baby Abby in Connecticut. Walmart is starting to be full of tourists and bikes. There was one biker couple that totally reminded me of Kane Heel and Setsu from Skip Beat, which was interesting. I kind of wanted to take a picture, but I didn't want to die. After shopping, the Abrahams fed us dinner, and we left on time to make it to Mona Meyer's home at 8. We were sorely tempted to not go visit, but I'm so glad we did. While Charlie was out irrigating, we talked with Mona about how things are going. Apparently, all of Charlie's family is part of the same church, and they look at Mona as an unchristian girl and don't really consider their marriage as valid. It's been hard on her. She really wants to be more active. She's endowed and goes to the temple, but Charlie's church meets at 10 a.m., same time as hers, or ours. When Charlie came in, we just chatted a while, then read the family proclamation out loud together. Charlie has a stutter, but after we got going, he started offering opinions and enjoyed the discussion. They committed to make sure they pray together every night before bed. Smiley face. On the way back, even though we got home late, we were so happy. They'll be sealed someday. Okay, so, first of all, I gotta set straight my confusion about what it means to be a Messianic Jew. 'Cause clearly I just didn't know anything about that as a missionary. So, I had weird defensiveness around it. And in fact, I didn't know about it when I read my journal entry, so I hurried and looked it up. So I still don't really know anything in depth about what it means to be a Messianic Jew, but I have enough I have enough information to I think set straight what I was defensive about. So let me explain that. So when I was a missionary and I heard that there was a couple that was meeting with missionaries anyway, I heard that they claimed to be Messianic Jews, and I wrote the word claim specifically, and I emphasized that, like, oh, I didn't think they really were. And what I thought that meant when I was a missionary was I thought that being a Messianic Jew meant that you were doing what the Mormons do. And what the Mormons do is there's these, like, things about the 12 tribes of Israel, and there's, like, the tribe of Ephraim and Manasseh, you know, all the names, whatever. The relevant part is that when you get your patriarchal blessing, when you're LDS, the patriarch, among the things that they tell you is they tell you what is your lineage through the tribes of Israel. And so when I heard that someone said that they were a Messianic Jew as a missionary, my interpretation was that they were saying that they were like one of the sort of 12, they were like some sort of lineage of, like, tracing back to Jesus, some sort of lineage of, like, they're like one of the 12 tribes of Israel. They're connected through, like, Judaism and also Christianity back to Jesus. And I was, like, all offended and defensive because I was like, no, that's me. No one else can say that if they're not Mormon, because we're the ones with the connection back to that time. And just so I can clarify, that's not what it means to be a Messianic Jew. It is a religious movement from, like, the date could be totally wrong. I think it was like the 1900s, but, you know, look it up. From, I think the U.S. I think it started in the U.S., but again, that could be wrong. But it's just a religious movement of, like, Christians who want to incorporate, like, Judaism and stuff, and they sort of claim both, right? So I got all offended and defensive about this, and it wasn't at all what I thought it was. And it just highlights how having zero access to information meant that anytime I learned about something that wasn't in my wheelhouse, I couldn't look it up. So I just had to, if I really was going to try to find out what was going on, ask someone about it. But most things I would probably just make a snap judgment and go from there. So this kind of shows that in action of the, like, oh, Sister Finlinson, here's this thing, doesn't know what it is, immediately assumes it must be like this other thing, and gets really defensive. So that all could have been a learning moment. If I was in a situation where I was allowed to look stuff up, I could have just quickly looked it up and then been like, oh, how interesting, what cool people, or whatever. Like, but instead, that's not what happened. So there's that moment. Then continuing on, I wrote about how I was sad about transfers. And I don't recall the entry where I was talking about being sad, but how timely, right? Because it looks like for one moment I was dwelling on some sort of sadness, and immediately the next morning I was, like, kicking myself, like, no, don't be sad, trying to find a solution. And so, of course, I focused on how do I get rid of this intolerable, unallowed feeling during my personal studies. And basically, whatever I had read, I would have done my best to manipulate it to convince me that I shouldn't be sad or whatever. And indeed, that was the case. Just gotta point that out. I will quickly mention what I was talking about with Cane Heel, Setsu, and Skip Beat. So that's just, Skip Beat is a manga that is still technically ongoing. It's being very slowly released. It might just, die a sad, slow, painful death without ever being finished. But I got really into it in high school, especially like my first year of college. I just had so much fun reading it. And there are two characters who get these kind of ridiculous, like, biker gangster personas that they have to act as in the story, and their names are Cane Heel and Setsu for, like, the alter egos. That's more context than you need, but it just explains why, when I saw people who were, like, dressed kind of cool and they were, like, bikers or whatever, I would have, that's, like, it's like the people from this manga that I used to read. And it's just happy to see another little moment of, like, my own interests just completely not related to, like, the church or being a missionary. And in fact, something that I would have felt, like, kind of embarrassed about, the amount of time that I had spent reading. Like, I would have thought, like, I need to repent. I'm spending too much time reading manga. It's nice that it made it through the shame firewall, and I wrote it in my journal, and there's this one little moment of me as a person. Hooray. Of course, it was quick, but still, it's something, worth celebrating to me. And then I gotta finish with the little situation with the Mona and Charlie. So I just gotta point out, so Mona was Mormon, Charlie was not. They were a really quite conservative family. They, ranchers in South Dakota. Both Christians, but both from separate churches. And they still, they still made it work. That, they still fell in love and were married, but they had this issue. And I can't believe how blind I was to the duality of this situation. Like, and I think, I don't know, I either just didn't even see how mirrored the situation was, or I could see it, but I didn't care because we were the right ones and they were wrong. The situation, meaning I wrote, and we talked with Mona, and I wrote about how all of his family goes to a different church. They're all part of this other church. They all see Mona as not a real Christian, and they don't see their marriage as valid. And I was like, that's so sad and horrible. And yeah, that is hard, but I totally was just not acknowledging that was literally the same for both of them, right? Like, both religions are trying to get the other person to be their religion because they're like, we're the right ones, they're not. And I was like, it just can't, isn't it wild how I was like, we're the right ones and they're the wrong ones. Particularly the, like, we don't consider their marriage as valid. I thought that was so cruel. And also in the same thing, I was writing about how we're really happy because they're so cute and we know that they're going to work out and we know that they'll be sealed someday. So we didn't see their marriage as valid either because they hadn't been married in the temple, right? It's like, instead of allowing for some sort of compromise, which it seems like they both had found, at least on some level. It was like the religious system was like, no compromise. You have to do it this way. Anyway, that's just strange to look back on now with this perspective. All right. Tuesday, July 28th, 2015. Mission day 291. So this morning started well, but I totally ended up not even studying, which I'm pretty sad about. Although I should have, I didn't wash my hair in the shower, so I spent until 8 o'clock messing with it, until Sister Snow convinced me I should just wash it under the bathtub faucet. For the next hour, she went and slept on the couch while I messed with my hair. Meh. No studies. When I prayed to open companionship study, I asked for help to prepare a lesson for everyone, even though we hadn't studied. Heavenly Father is merciful, and we got it taken care of. Smiley face. We had our last 12-week training meeting in Rapid. The get to know you question had the potential to be awkward. You're going to go survival on an island. Which 2 people in this room will you bring? But it ended up being hilarious. I said I'd bring Sister Snow and Elder Wilsey. We too got all the elder signatures in our yearbooks afterwards. That investigating family that's moving from Tennessee to Spearfish today? Yeah, they haven't actually bought a house yet. I don't think they realize the full extent of just how crowded a rally is gonna be. They will probably be homeless a while. I feel so bad. Since we missed 2 hours of P-Day yesterday, we drove back through Pine Ridge and stopped to look at all the cute Main Street shops. Sister Snow and I both found new journals we're really excited about. Mine is red leather embossed with an Asian cherry blossom print. The pages are all gold-leafed and I love it. Then we came back and napped for an hour. That was nice. Once our P-Day was up, we headed out to go lark hunting. Sister Stuff wasn't home, but the Cutshaws and Camry Hanks were. I haven't caught them at home since I came in April, so that was exciting. They let us in and we talked some. They're headed on vacation tomorrow, so we'll try to get in with them next week. Maybe they'll let us help with remodeling the kitchen or something. The Youngquists had us over for dinner, just Jessie and her mom. The younger siblings were going to the Community Connections Church block party. Jessie is in the middle of going to school to BYUI, and she's thinking of going on a mission. We told her she totally should. Then we met with Doug. The Benches came with us for the first time, and they just did awesome. Brother Bench is nice and gentle, so I think Doug will come to be able to really trust him and hopefully let him, Brother Bench, baptize him, Doug. Remember that funeral in April or May or whenever? Well, Nicole Rollins, the mom who originally contacted us for help, just sent us a text to say thanks again. And she wanted our mailing address so she could write a note. I need to remember to friend request Patty when I get back home. All right. I'll just explain, because I don't think it totally made sense, the 12-week training meeting thing. So I've explained 12-week training before, but I'll just explain it again. So part of the training, the first 12 weeks of your mission, you are in training, and then you're like a full missionary after that, right? So I think this was the 12th week of me training Sister Snow. And so every week every missionary in the probably just general area, not just the district, but the zone, who was in training, we would all once a week get together in the middle somewhere and talk about how training was going and do role plays and have just some sort of like extra training stuff. And for whatever reason, we did a get to know you question to start it off, and the question was, you're going on an island, who are you going to bring with you? Like, kind of game or whatever. Let me grab my handbook. Ooh. So, normally that would be, normally just, that kind of question could, like, be fun or silly or whatever. But let me flip through here. I maybe should look this up in the table of contents. Okay, yeah, let me look this up 1 second. Okay, yeah, page 33 in the White Handbook. Okay, so normally having some sort of get to know you question where you're like you're say some hypothetical situation, who you're going to bring, could be fun, could be silly, could be awkward, but it was a landmine of impropriety, and possible even like breaking the rules, aka sin, for missionaries. Let me just read this, and then we can kind of make the connection. Okay, so under the missionary conduct section, particularly under the theme is opposite sex, right? Quote, never be alone with, flirt with, or associate in any other inappropriate way with anyone of the opposite sex. Do not telephone, write, email, or accept calls or letters from anyone of the opposite sex living within or near mission boundaries. The only exceptions are for communications between sister missionaries and their mission leaders, mission-related telephone calls, such as calls to confirm appointments, and letters of support and encouragement to converts. Might I add that we also did all of our phone stuff on speakerphone to even negate like one-on-one talking, right? Report immediately to your mission president any situation that might cause you or your companion to violate this standard. You and your companion should not visit or accept rides from individuals of the opposite sex, unless another responsible adult of your own sex is also present. Always obey this rule, even if the situation seems harmless. And skipping forward, do not counsel missionaries of the opposite sex, even if you are serving in a leadership position. Such talk can lead to inappropriate feelings and relationships. Always refer such cases to your mission president. Okay, so they come down very hard in our White Handbook, which the sisters, we didn't have a little pocket to carry in our pocket, but we carried it in our bag with us everywhere we went. We read from it every morning. And this is not the only thing. Like, there were so many trainings and rules around we could not flirt or be friends with, almost, the elders. So the fact that we had to, somehow this question was brought up, and we had to, somehow, say people who we would go be on a deserted island with, without accidentally, getting anyone to think that we like them, or, what a landmine. And I had actually forgotten who Elder Willsey was, so I went and found him on Facebook, and I was like, oh yeah, he was just, he's not someone I would have had a crush on, I'll put it that way. So I think he was someone who was, particularly Boy Scout minded, very, always had a pocket knife, that kind of thing. So I was like, maybe if I say this person, then it will sound appropriate, but I just had to point out that one little weird moment because my journal entry did not give the full ramifications of how awkward and intense that was. And I'm just gonna have one more thing about this day, pointing out the red leather journal. So here we get another moment of just sort of my own personal joy, you know. Obviously, I was very into journaling. Of course, that wasn't just a personal thing, though. So there is instruction to that for, in general, it's good for church members. It's expected for Mormons to journal a lot. I remember talking to people on my mission and telling them that they should journal because it's like you're writing the scriptures for your own descendants to read. Like the way that when Nephi and Lehi wrote stuff down, then their posterity could read it in the Book of Mormon. And now when we write stuff down, then our posterity will read it someday and have their faith affirmed. And that's like super, super important, right? So there is the element of I am getting happiness out of this beautiful journal that I got. And this journal was particularly for my study notes. It wasn't for like my regular journal. I had a regular journal and a study journal. And because of the expectation culturally, in addition to the like mandate that as missionaries we were supposed to be journaling, even though I didn't always have enough money for food necessarily, I always made sure to be very careful and choose a journal that would look really nice and professional, and even it would like look almost like scripture, you know, gold leafed and embossed red leather. It would look on a shelf, and then when like people are going through and reading it someday, it would look as important and sacred as it was because it was like the scripture of my life. So like weird, right? Weird and interesting. But also I do still like a nice journal. In fact, quick fun fact about me, when I went on my first date with my husband, he showed me a book that he had made. He'd done a bookbinding class, and I was so impressed that he could make journals. That was like one early hook. Was like, oh my gosh, look at this beautiful book that he made. Anyway, let's keep going. Wednesday, July 29th, 2015. Mission Day 292. We were fed lunch and dinner today. The benches took us to the Hungry Buffalo for lunch. And after an impromptu quilting service project with Grandma Rooks, she made pecan waffles. Pecan. A couple stories from today I want to remember. First, it's been really hard to coordinate missionary work with this ward. Everyone's so busy and tired. I bring it up as my concern in area call almost every week. So I mentioned it again in area call, and I got the same reaction from Elder Parks. He is also at a loss of what to do. He's frustrated with the area, especially with Brother Herzig, who was our ward mission leader. Then Sister Snow got started about what she feels, and it just got negative. I'm sorry to say it, but I let myself fall down too. I didn't try to tell them to be patient or defend him, Brother Herzig, but I just went ahead and agreed with what they were saying. Elder Parks encouraged us to call the zone leaders and let them know about this concern we're having with the ward leadership. And we did call them and left a voicemail. We resolved we needed to do a HTTBT/comp inventory, how to begin teaching, at ward coordination meeting. At that meeting, we decided to approach it in the how can I help attitude, and I'm so glad we did. we got some good communication of what we're all trying to do, and now we have a better idea of how we can get organized and hasten the work in Custer. Sister Snow seemed super patient all during the meeting. Afterwards in our car, we were talking about how well it went, and Sister Snow said that in the middle of our meeting, she'd been given a reminder of how hard and stressful it was for her to go back to church while she was going to school and working full-time. And Brother Herzig, he's supporting his family and doing accelerated online schooling and trying to work with 2 sets of uncommunicative missionaries. So, as is always the case, the only ones who needed to change was our perspective. Also, we went to visit Sister Baruman, and it was so creepy feeling in her house that we decided to just sing her a hymn, and after the first verse, I closed my hymn book and ended. I could not feel the spirit at all. I was so on edge. The poor lady was so confused, but we basically ran out of the house. At first, I thought it was nothing, but the longer we sat in her living room, the worse it got. We went and told Bishop Davis about it. He went straight over and hopefully took care of it. There was something bad dwelling in her home. Anyway, I'm very glad for the Spirit who guides us, and I'm very grateful for the many prayers for our safety. Oh, man. I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to talk about that first. So, let me explain what I thought was happening at the time, and then I'll give my current perspective on what was going on. So at the time, I, obviously was pretty deep in Mormon theology, and it gets even more intense when you're missionaries, right? We've talked about this. And part of that is if you feel bad and if you don't feel the Spirit, if you feel worried, it might not only mean that like the Spirit isn't there, but it can mean that the literal fallen angels who are a third of the host of heaven, who are scary evil spirits that walk the face of the earth, unseen by our mortal eyes, but very much there. If you felt anxious or unsettled, it could mean that there were literally evil demon spirits there around you, like trying to get you. I was taught that this was real, and I believed that this was real. So for whatever reason, I don't remember this situation. I don't, but something about the setting or something, it felt really creepy. So even though we would normally really wanted to spend time with people, like having a lesson with someone scheduled was so much better than just going and tracting, right? But something about the way that I felt, it was so creepy. So we got to her house, we said the opening prayer, and we were just starting with singing a hymn, and we didn't even finish. We just sang one verse, and then we just left. And then we went and we told the bishop, oh my gosh, there's something really creepy, go to her please, go to her house, see what's going on, if you feel something, please go, cast out the spirit, which is a thing that we did you could have the people with the priesthood come do, right? I think there's some times later in my mission where we had apartments that we felt were creepy, and we would call the elders and have them come, and they would do the prayer and cast out the evil spirits. We couldn't do it ourselves. We poor females. But yeah, that's kind of what I thought was going on, and I thought that we could tell what was happening because we had the Spirit and that there were people who prayed for us to be safe. But now when I read through this, I have a little bit more context, surprisingly, than when it was happening. And I can see that, like, I had just, like, been a victim of, like scary stalking harassment, right? And it hadn't really been dealt with, and even if it had been, like, it was scary, right? But it hadn't been dealt with, and I'm just seeing, different instances of feeling extra scared, hypervigilant, like worried that there are some evil forces out to get us, So I kind of think that's what was happening here. I think, like, what PTSD means is post-traumatic stress disorder. But the thing, and I don't know that I would call it PTSD necessarily, but the way that trauma affects you is the, like, afterwards part, right? When something scary happens, if there is no sort of dealing with what happened and restoring, like, oh, that shouldn't have happened, and some sort of restoring a sense of safety, then, like, you just kind of go on forward expecting, like, oh no, this scary thing happened once, and I may not be consciously, cognitively thinking that it's going to keep happening, but your body knows that it happened, and your body knows that you still feel unsafe. So basically, every time I was a missionary and something scary happened and we didn't, like, get help from, like, a licensed therapist or, like, the way we really should have, it just made this worse. So, like, we've already read many instances of me being, like, hypervigilant and, like, scared of demons or scared of, like, men in the parking lot walking their dogs, or, like, sometimes when I was a missionary, I was scared, and that was, like, my natural intuition, like, clocking that there was something off. But a lot of the time, I was just carrying around this sense of, like, oh, I'm not safe, I have to keep my eyes peeled. And that's, sadly, what was happening here. So, a little moment of heart space for Sister Finlayson and Sister Snow, right? Also, I'm gonna unpack a little bit the meeting that we had with Brother Hertzik. So, what happened was, the ward we were with, the members were all so stressed, and we had a hard time getting the normal missionary work done with them that we were supposed to. And our ward mission leader, Brother Hertzik, was really busy, and he didn't do all the stuff that I guess we needed him to do. And we were really frustrated with him. And then we met together. We talked about it as the missionaries. We decided we needed to talk to him. We met with him. We talked about it. We did our best to approach it trying to understand and not just immediately blame him. And we were all able to sort of talk about what was going on, see what he was dealing with, maybe see what we could do to help, and we got to a resolution. But the interesting thing to me about this situation was the way that I saw it. the lessons that I learned from this experience. Because I did not learn the lesson that, oh, sometimes maybe you are frustrated with someone and it's okay, And in fact, maybe that's some valuable information, and maybe that's showing you that, oh, I need to talk to this person, and if we talk about it and get through it, like, this gives us a chance to all be better off in the long term, right? And, like, it's healthy and good, actually, to discuss disagreements or problems, right? That's not what I learned. What I learned was, oh no, I'm not supposed to be upset. Oh no, I need to defend Brother Herzig. Oh no, we're getting negative. We're having problems with someone. This is not okay. This is never okay. Like, I was blaming myself for that even after we resolved it. And then, after we resolved it, I was like, the problem, it wasn't at any of this, none of this was this guy's fault. It was all our fault. We needed to change our perspective. And I wrote, as is always the case, like, and I so believe that. And, you know, this is something that I'm keenly aware of because it's something I'm still working on in therapy now, like trying to unpack and understand this part of my psychological experience, my little psychological script. It's like, I learned so deeply and so intuitively that it's never okay to be upset at anyone or about anything, but especially if you're upset with them, you can't get negative. You can't, like, say it, right? You can't, like, express, like, frustration. It's only has to be positive emotions. And it's always my fault, right? My takeaway from this was, this is my fault. I needed to have a more positive perspective. If only I had better read the situation, if only I had been more tuned into the Spirit, more tuned into God, I would have been able to mind read what was going on and just fix it. And the problem would never have even come up, and it's my fault that I didn't do that without talking to him. That is what I learned. Okay. Thursday, July 30th, 2015. Mission Day 293. Weekly planning for transfer week. Bleh. At least tomorrow is Harry Potter's birthday. We saw Stacy Siebert for the first time since I've been here. She is less active and is married to a non-member. And since they're retired, they keep up an awesome, huge, artsy yard. She has fun metal sculptures all around, and she knows each little flower by name. I was reminded of the cool gardening ladies in that show, Rosemary and Thyme. I don't know if I've ever been inspired to teach Follow the Prophet out of the blue to less actives before, but we taught it to Bonnie Dolly. After watching President Monson's last address, Blessings of the Temple, she committed to come to church on Sunday. Woohoo! I may just go ahead and bear my testimony, smiley face. It's weird that I have only 8 months left. It's weird to be over the hump. It's weird to be in the single digits. I even had a weird dream last night that I went home early, and it was not cool. Wow. Oh, all right. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the Harry Potter thing, but I have to address it. So, at this point in time, 2026, and also not just 2026, in the years before. I no longer support the Harry Potter franchise, particularly the author, J.K. Rowling, Joanne Rowling, because of her work in removing human rights. She is unfortunately a really hateful, bigoted woman, and that's really sad for everyone, but most sad for the people who she is constantly making life horrible for, right? So I no longer support the new material, etc. I no longer celebrate Harry Potter's birthday. But 10 years ago, she hadn't fallen down that dark web of being horrible for whatever reasons, and it was still a really important part of my life, right? So here's just this moment of just normal Allie having a normal brain moment in my journal, and it's not all missionary stuff. And it feels more poignant because we've read other entries that were on like normal national holidays that I was like, oh yeah, it's this holiday. Like, I totally didn't even think about it because I was just so plugged into the missionary week, I just like didn't even care that it was a holiday. But it looks like there were still some things like the manga that I was reading, or like Harry Potter's birthday, that there were still some things that were so important to me that I could remember them even as we're getting into the depths of the haze of like missionary brain. And it's interesting to me that I mention I take some time to reflect about the feeling about my mission is like closer to being done than to being started. That was like a scary thing for me and a strange thing to process. I don't know why I didn't write down what day was my hump day and celebrate it, because I had written about that before it came to my hump day, but I never did. I never did figure that. I never did write it down on the actual day of. I don't know why, but at least at this point, I'm like mindful and writing about and having feelings about us more than halfway through. And, I was like, I had a dream. I went home early and it was not cool. And, we have dreams about stuff we're stressed about, right? I think part of the situation was, yeah, I would hate to go home early, but I also just kind of didn't want to go home. Because, remember, I was using my mission as an opportunity to kind of escape adult life. I wasn't ready to get married. I was scared of the attention from the RMs. And I didn't really feel like if someone asked me to marry them, like I'd be able to say no. But when you're a missionary, you're off the table. But whether I liked it or not, as hard as it was to be a missionary, as much as it was hard to be away from my family and like real normal life and that, just the safety of being off the marriage market and not having to be responsible for choices because everything is prescribed to you as a missionary. So it was like, even though this is really taxing, it's also really mentally like the load of having to deal with making decisions about what I want to do with my life. It was so much, there was the freedom from that, and I was worried about going back. Feeling tender. Okay, Let's keep going. Friday, July 31st, 2015. Mission day 294. Happy birthday, Harry. Yesterday in my studies, I studied all about diligence. See Ether 2:13-14 for the ultimate smackdown. And then we trained on it in district meeting. And then we did it today. Smiley face. Work, 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 then reap. Oh, how we reaped. So we met with Sister Lowen, first time since Easter. And at the end, we just started to talk about her grandkids. And by the time we left, we had Isaiah and Peter and Dusty, but she's 6, on date to start teaching them the lessons. Woohoo! 2 new referrals. Also, her daughter Janae is a referral also. As I was promised in my blessing from Bishop Davis 2 transfers ago, too bad we waited so long, we had bunches of success going through the ward list today. We're going to start meeting with Brother Grinstead, and when we went to Clement Bench's home, he referred us to his neighbors. We walked over to the first. Their guard dogs almost scared us off. But powered by the prayer of faith, we pressed forward and the mom came to the door. She is named Diana Charney, and we are going to go meet with her on August 12th, once they get back from their son's wedding in Indiana. By then it was time to drive to Westport for dinner with Sister Wolf. It was just gorgeous outside. I took probably 20 pictures of just green fields. Smiley face. Sister Wolf fed us chicken fried venison, mashed potatoes, and garden vegetables. We raced out after 45 minutes to make it to our lesson with the Ikedas on time, but they canceled right as we were on our way out. So we decided to try the Shufords in Westport. They weren't home, we think. But on our way out of Westport, Sister Snow felt we needed to go back and try someone. So we did. We got a good 20-minute chat in with a mom who, at first, didn't need a visit herself and couldn't think of anyone who did. But by the end of the conversation, we'd given her a family search card and a link to the Bible videos. Okay. I'm gonna talk about diligence. So let's see what Ether chapter 2 verses 13-14 have to say. Yes? Okay, so Ether is the Book of Mormon. Let me hurry and read this and see how much context I need to give you. Okay, so the Book of Mormon, in general, tells the story of people leaving Jerusalem and going to the Americas and starting population on the Americas. And it's, in theory, like the history of how Native Americans came to be. It's not true. We've learned this, but that is the overall story of the Book of Mormon. Within the Book of Mormon, it turns out there is a second group of people who have already done this, and that's what we learn about in the Book of Ether. So the Book of Ether is a story of people who came over to the Americas from the time of the Tower of Babel. So much earlier in the biblical timeline than the Nephites, right? So they're called the Jaredites, just so you know. And for whatever reason, it's written, there's Jared and the brother of Jared. And I think the brother of Jared's name is Mahanrai Morian Kamer, but that could be totally wrong. But what you need to know is that the brother of Jared is particularly righteous, but we just learned about Jared and the brother of Jared. And the brother of Jared, I think, is like the prophet guy, but Jared and the brother of Jared are the two characters here. So, in Ether, chapter 2, they are getting ready to leave after, they left the Tower of Babel area with all their friends and family so that they could keep their same language or whatever. And they're getting ready to go get ships and go to the Americas and be in a new land. But here we find out that they're kind of lollygagging and they get in trouble and God calls them to repentance about it. So let me read 13 and 14. Okay. And now I proceed with my record. For behold, it came to pass that the Lord did bring Jared and his brethren forth, even to that great sea which divideth the lands. And as they came to the sea, they pitched their tents, and they called the name of the place Moriancomer. And they dwelt in tents upon the seashore for the space of 4 years. Chilling on the beach for 4 years. Kind of nice, right? And it came to pass at the end of 4 years that the Lord came again unto the brother of Jared, and stood in a cloud, and talked with him. And for the space of 3 hours did the Lord talk with the brother of Jared, and chastened him, because he remembered not to call upon the name of the Lord. Yeah. So basically, I referenced this in my journal because I read this in my personal study when I was reading about diligence, and we were going to be talking about diligence, and that was like our focus for a district meeting and all that. And this is the example of people who are just chilling, living on the beach and kind of just waiting for God to tell them what to do. And then finally God shows up in a cloud and he chews them out for 3 hours. And he's like, yo, stop waiting. Like, you got to ask me what to do and you got to do it. So, I thought that we had been really undiligent before, and specifically my journal, I wrote, as I was promised in my blessing from Bishop Davis 2 transfers ago, too bad we waited so long, we had bunches of success going through the word list today. Yeah. So the lesson I transferred from the scripture in Ether chapter 2 to what's going on in my life that I thought God wanted me to learn was, I had been given a promise from Bishop Davis, and because of his priesthood authority, it was a promise from God. So God had told me transfers ago what I needed to do to have success. And here I was waiting, and finally I did what he said I should do. And then miraculously, we had all the success. So I was kind of kicking myself for metaphorically getting to the beach and then just sitting there for 4 years waiting to finally act. So there you go. That's the lesson you were supposed to take from that. At least according to moi as a missionary. Yep. All right, let's just keep going. Saturday, August 1st, 2015, Mission Day 295. It's been a beautiful day. I started it out being a pickle, letting myself be frustrated and resentful. Fortunately, I got in personal studies before I did anything I'd regret. My perspective was brought back and I was able to realize it was all in my head. Tomorrow is Fast Sunday. All day I was trying to think about what I should fast for, and I originally prayed for help in being diligent, obedient, and positive all day. But my mind was brought to a better purpose while training. So now I'm really fasting for Sister Snow to be able to accept God's will for transfers, and for her to find happiness and positivity and peace instead of frustration. Brother Herzig purchased 2 bountiful baskets, and they gave us the extra. It was totally sweet, because then I got to make dinner for Sister Snow. I bought 8 sticks of butter and already used 1. We had mashed potatoes, complete with evaporated milk, gravy, corn on the cob, garlicked bread, and apple and pear slices. We watched the Testaments while we ate, and then after cleaning up, we went to Dairy Queen. I got a fudge stuffed cookie and a mini salted caramel truffle blizzard. Sister Snow bought the apple fritter and another salted caramel blizzard. We felt like crazies. We ate them on the swings at the park where we go running, and I only ate a few bites of both and just threw the rest away. Too sugary. This morning our alarm went off at 7 a.m., which was weird. No exercise for us. I need to write letters for everyone. Oh man. It's really hitting me today. Wow. Okay, from the top, some more, unfortunately familiar blaming myself for not feeling positive all the time. I don't know why I was feeling frustrated and resentful, but I was. And I actually wrote about it, but I wrote about it to prove that it was indeed possible to get rid of that. You know, it was like, oh, I just need to, my perspective was brought back. That's what I wrote. And I was able to realize it was all in my head. That translates to, I had my personal study. I read whatever scripture or, whatever to remind myself to focus on eternity, to focus on like my responsibility as like a missionary and a daughter of God and a child of God, and like whatever's happening is just all in my head, so just let it go. That was standard practice, and it was certainly being practiced. I thought it was possible to choose to not be frustrated and resentful. And I thought it was possible to never be frustrated and resentful. And, going off of this, I was so focused on diligence, right? I wrote about diligence the day before, and we just had our district meeting talking about diligence, so it was like, it was what was on my mind. And when I was thinking about what I should fast about and pray for help with, was at first, my first idea for the upcoming Fast Sunday was, I'm going to pray for help with being diligent. And my definition that I wrote of what diligence meant was to be obedient and positive all day. So yeah, there's just this thread just weaving through every aspect of the missionary experience of my life, of just constantly getting mad at myself for being a human with a range of emotion, constantly shaming myself and guilting myself and believing it's possible to only experience positive emotions. And I thought it was healthy and normal and good to be 100% obedient. No wonder I was feeling frustration and resentment. In any regular life throughout the day, you're probably at some point going to feel frustrated and resentful. Just like no matter how good life is, you're probably going to, at some point during the day, something's going to happen and you're going to feel frustrated or you're going to feel resentment. But the fact that I was in this situation where I was trying so hard to be obedient to not my own drive and my own desires and values, and and my own boundaries of what I was comfortable and even my own just physical capabilities. I was trying so hard to be obedient to someone else's rules, to the system, organizations, their standards for what I was physically, emotionally, mentally capable of, and ignore all of my own experiences, my own comfort, my own distress, my own anything, right? And be positive and happy while doing that. No wonder I was feeling frustrated and resentful. God. And then, of course, the way that I dealt with this was finding a higher purpose. And the higher purpose was, I just got to get out of myself. I got to turn out and focus on Sister Snow. So instead of fasting to ask God for help for me to be obedient and positive all day, I was like, insight, I'm going to fast for Sister Snow to have help. For her to be obedient and positive all day. So, yeah, it does actually work to forget yourself and turn out and focus on other people, because that sort of numbs you. If you speaking from experience, if you I can numb my own discontent, frustration, whatever, and I can kind of project it onto someone else and just focus on them constantly. And whether or not they are actually feeling frustrated or resentful or whatever it is that I'm trying to not feel, if I just focus on them and I focus on trying to make them feel better, it kind of alleviates my own discomfort of my own uncomfortable feelings. And that strategy does work. I just would not recommend it, and I am trying to unlearn this strategy now because it's not a healthy relationship. This is, in fact, codependency. This is, in fact, enmeshment. This is, in fact, undifferentiation. Yeah. So, not very healthy, but what I was doing. And then, to completely switch directions here, just some more food stuff. So, we often didn't have enough money for food, especially by the end of the month. So it was very wonderful and very sweet of Brother Herzig to give us a whole some sort of community garden or whatever. Somehow we ended up with this basket of all this delicious, fresh summer produce, which was it was extra special for me because, I was away from my family, and part of my family's, kind of tradition is, my grandparents always had a huge vegetable garden, and my parents still do to this day have always a big garden. So that was a way to kind of feel some connection to my normal summer routine and feel a little closer to home, was by getting to enjoy some nice, corn on the cob and, the stuff you eat in the summer that we just couldn't even afford to buy. So that's bittersweet to look back on, the kindness of someone helping us have that experience, and the sadness that I was away at all. I should have just been home and enjoying the company of my family. There was no need for me to actually be out here trying to convince people to join the church. But that's what I was doing. And also sad that we had so much food insecurity. And then there's also the element of the diet culture, fear of the simultaneous, strong Mormon inclination for sweets, and also just I myself, for whatever reason, have always had and still do have quite the sweet tooth. I love desserts and treats. But that's like a big part of being Mormon, but also it's a big part of being a Mormon, especially missionary, of all the like food shaming and like don't eat unhealthy food. You know, we were given specific trainings to be careful not to gain weight, to not eat too much food, to not eat too much sugar, right? So there's just this, I'm noticing like this feeling of like, oh, I'm like recognizing the stress I was under. It was like one of our last days together, so I was trying so hard to have a special experience for like Sister Snow and I to have together. I used this time to like make a special like celebration feast the best we could, and we even went out afterwards and spent money on desserts that we normally didn't do because we just couldn't afford it. And then there's the like the body shaming, the fear of getting bigger, the fear of being perceived as gluttonous or whatever, and I threw it away, you know? Like, maybe I was full, maybe I didn't actually want that much, maybe it really was too sweet, I don't know, but I took a few bites of both and just threw the rest away. Feeling very tender about this. All right, so let's move on to Sunday. I'm just going to point out, this is the last day in this season. The next day, I will have switched us to season 3, I think, because it's we're going to be going to a new area. Spoilers. So here's the last day of this season. Sunday, August 2nd, 2015, Mission Day 296. So, new transfer, new planner. We had a really nice fast and testimony meeting. I bore my thankamony and cried. Sister Snow bore her testimony and cried about me. Rebecca Davis talked about girls' camp. She's the bishop's daughter. We're talking to Sydney right now, and today was the first day of rally, and some tourists threw their breakfast at her face. Poor thing. A whole week of this. For context, she worked at a deli. Actually, a group of bikers from Lehi, Utah came to sacrament meeting today. We helped them get pictures of their white shirts and bikes in front of the chapel. I got one on my camera as well. Interesting thing to note, Elder Trout, my first assistant to the president, his dad was in the group. We drove out to the Walker's home in Bullhead, South Dakota for dinner. It was super fun and delicious. We shared elder birch, and they sent us home with 6 homemade rolls. Sister Snow is super nervous for transfer calls, and I'm getting nervous too, because she really wants to train, and I'm starting to think I'm going to stay. This is probably the most stressful wait for a call yet. Ooh, okay, just briefly explain poor Sydney. So, yes, she had people throw food at her, which is never appropriate. You should never throw your food at a food service person. However, I do think I should make it clear that she wasn't just sort of like walking around town and some like random tourist threw food at her. No, it was a little more like people being rude in a food service situation. So, still inappropriate, but probably makes more sense knowing that. Yeah. Um, Not a ton of thoughts about this day. I think I mentioned the thing about Elder Trout's dad being there because I honestly don't even really remember who Elder Trout was very much. And I don't feel like looking him up. We might not even be Facebook friends, I don't know. But I think I wrote that down because even though there was like this fear of like marriage and I like was kind of on my mission to avoid having to deal with like growing up and making my own decisions and getting married and stuff, there was also this sense that like you never know when you're meeting your husband. So I think sometimes I would like name drop different guys, like just in case it happened to be that like, oh, well, we ended up together. And how funny, here's this weird connection from like our mission showing how God had his hand in this all the time. And like, look, I met, I think that's why I wrote that down, which is kind of weird. Kind of weird looking back on, because just, like the just in case part of it, and just the fact that was so present in my mind, right, that I would take the time to write that down when I like didn't really know or care about this person. But weird. We're waiting for transfers. We're waiting for the call. We're going to get the call on Monday. We were super nervous. I was starting to hope that I was going to maybe stay in the area and, or maybe not hope, but I'm starting to think that, maybe I'm just going to stay here and I'm not going to leave. It just sounds like we're getting a little stressed because we both spoke at Fast and Testimony meeting, and we both cried. And I didn't even call mine my testimony. I called it my thankimony because I just I was feeling so much coming up, and I was feeling so possibly like manically like grateful for the people there and worried about leaving and just like, oh no, I don't know what it's gonna be like if I leave and if it's different, and you all have been so kind to me and I'm so grateful for this. And oh boy, it's I'm feeling the feels. I'm feeling the feels. I'm not remembering the exact stress of waiting for the transfer call, but I am sympathetic to the plight. We'll see what happens. And that's my 44th week as a Mormon sister missionary. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast if you want to continue following my story. Please rate and review this episode, and please share this with anyone you think would be interested. I hope you have a great week, and if you want my advice, just remember that you can love others best when you love yourself first. Bye.